a little over 2,000 years ago, the world was in a sorry state. The strong oppressed the weak. The weak had no power, no recourse, and often suffered greatly. In 2,000 years, the world has changed a little, but not enough. The strong still oppress the weak. Those who have much are often reluctant to share with those who have little. But now, these days, we have a concept that was unknown in the world 2,000 years ago. We now believe that the meek shall inherit the earth, that everyone matters, that we all have dignity and worth. And that idea came about because of one man whose life we celebrate tonight. In those days, a woman who became pregnant out of wedlock was at best an outcast. She might be stoned to death, but if she were lucky and her family chose to take pity on her, she would merely be disowned and cast out into the streets. She would be reduced to begging, but few would take pity on her. If she survived, she would have little choice other than prostitution. A bitter life indeed. For me, the unsung hero of the Christmas story is Joseph. Joseph must have been a remarkable man on so many levels. Imagine, if you will, Joseph being promised to marry a girl and then discovering that she was pregnant and not by him. He must have been appalled and very hurt. The shame would have been overwhelming. But we are told he was a kind man who would choose not to make her situation public, but rather give her a chance to perhaps be spirited away, maybe to distant relatives, where she could live in shame, but at least she could live. For him to have that great a compassion for Mary was a very big deal. In that time and culture, she had dishonored him, disgraced him, and he had every right to call vengeance upon her. In fact, it was expected of him to do so. But he wanted no revenge. Rather, he took pity on her. What a remarkable individual. And then he had a dream, and based on the dream, he rejected all forms of retaliation, and he took Mary as his wife, even though she was pregnant with a child not his own. We hear very little more about Joseph. We know he tried to protect Mary and the child from King Herod. And we know that when Jesus was 12 and disappeared into the temple to argue with the priests, that Joseph and Mary went looking for him. we know little more about Joseph. But he must have been a remarkably loving man. I say this because even though we hear no more about Joseph, when Jesus started his ministry, he wanted to replace his followers' idea of God as a wrathful, judging monster. And the highest compliment he could give to God to bring that idea of a loving God was to say, "Our Father." To Jesus, the idea of Father was someone who was wise and loving and caring. I think he got that from Joseph. A child is born. That is the news that was proclaimed. A child is born. And that is a wondrous moment indeed. For each child born is a promise of hope, of possibilities. When Mary and Joseph first felt the baby in their arms, I bet they were filled with the awe that every parent feels, wondering what he would be like, hoping for all good things for him. We don't know much about the family life of Jesus as he was growing up, but when he became an adult, he was a happy person. Oh, I know. Tradition says that he was a man of sorrows, but the Gospels tell us a different story. Jesus was a popular man. People were constantly asking him to come over to their house and have dinner with them. And children loved him. They followed him all over the place. In fact, it was so bad that his disciples even started shooing them away, and Jesus had to say, no, let the children come. In my experience, children are attracted to someone who is merry, someone who tells stories and plays games. They are not attracted to dour, sorrowful people. Children love cheerful people, people who are fun to be around. The priests did not approve of him. Why didn't they approve of him? Well, they thought he was not serious enough. They even accused him, saying, the Son of Man came eating and drinking, and they say, look, a glutton and a wine-bibber, a friend of tax collectors and sinners. Jesus loved food and drink, and he loved people. Hang on. This is not exactly the picture that we have been told about him. Not exactly the traditional idea. I think he would have loved family gatherings filled with laughter and caring. He probably would have loved singing and games and good cheer. And that is an appropriate way to celebrate his birthday. We are now going to take the offering. When Jesus was born, there were many cultures and many religions all over the world. Many differences, but they had one thing in common. It was an attitude, an idea. And that idea was the strong, because they were strong, could do whatever they wished to the weak, and it was okay. There is no concept in any culture or religion that I am aware of which gave anyone any basic human rights unless they had power. The abuse of the weak by the strong was and still is the norm in human history. But one man had a different idea. One man said that everyone matters. The meek shall inherit the earth. One man implied that everyone, not just the powerful, everyone is important. He taught that everyone should be treated with love and respect. Revolutionary. Before Jesus, only the strong and powerful had rights. Power was the only thing that mattered. Those who had no power were at the mercy of those that did, and mercy was not a high value. But Jesus promoted the idea that we are all important. We all matter. Every single one of us has dignity and worth. Jesus died, but his message did not. Yes, the story of his life was twisted and ugly things have happened in his name. But his message of love and forgiveness could not be killed. It influenced some of his followers and even some who were not at all his followers. St. Francis, Gandhi, Martin Luther King, the Enlightenment, the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights, all came about because of the vision of one man who said the last shall be first and the first shall be last, a man whose birthday we celebrate tonight. And now it is our turn. As we celebrate with friends and family, as we celebrate with laughter and song, let us also pass on kindness and love and acknowledge our brothers and sisters everywhere. Let us be a part of the peace that comes when we express love and appreciation for all, when we stand up for the rights of others, when we celebrate the family of all of us. Let us be the peace we wish to see in the world. So be it. We have a tradition that we will dim the lights, and I will light a candle, and we will pass that light throughout all of us as we sing Silent Night.